standard technique these days for integrating 3D CG elements with a live action background plate is to capture a spherical image on the set and at the location of the graphic element that's to be inserted into the scene. If this image is captured in HDR, it can be used to calculate lighting as well as reflections in your 3D package, whether that's Maya, Studio Max, Cinema 4D, Blender, or whatever you use. This is called HDRI, or High Dynamic Range Imaging. This is a quickie tutorial on how to take a series of bracketed exposures shot with a Canon 5D Mark III, like the one here, using a Sigma 8mm f3.5 circular fisheye mounted on a Nodal Ninja M2 tripod head to produce a spherical HDRI that's suitable for image-based lighting. The software we'll use is Photomatix for our tone mapping, this software here from HDRsoft, and PT-GUI Pro for the stitching of our spherical image. Obviously, there are a lot of variations on how this might be done and changes one might want to introduce based on the specifics of the scene or how it was shot. But in general, this should get you most of the way there for anything that you'll want to do. Okay, let's get started. Okay, here is a folder of shots. They were exposed 2 exposures above and 2 exposures below a base for a total of 5 exposures per shot. All right, so 2 below, 1 below. Here's the base exposure. 1 above, 2 above, and then we move the camera 90 degrees. 2 below, 1 below, base exposure, 1 above, 1, 2 above, and then we start the sequence over again. All the way through the 4 cardinal positions up to another set that are looking up at the sky in order to capture a seamless sky. And then the final set of 5, the tripod is moved back and allowing us to shoot the ground underneath where the tripod was located in the initial set of sequences. All right, so that's our starting point. First thing, there are a number of ways we could do this. The thing that I found works the best and stitches the easiest within PT-GUI is to go ahead and let Photomatix handle the HDR creation. What we want is a single HDR file, 32-bit, full bandwidth image that we can use in our 3D package. While PT-GUI can do our HDRI blending for us if we want it to, it's just a lot. I find that there are a lot more errors and stitching errors when you're dealing with so many images. So let's go ahead and take care of these first. Okay, to get started, I'm going to create a folder here called Processed, and I'm going to open up Photomatix Pro. And the first thing that I want to do is decide what my preset is going to be for the look that I want for my set of images. This is just simply a kind of an exploratory technique to figure out the look I want. So I'm going to take this first set of 5 images here and drag them into Photomatix and click on Merge for HDR rendering. And you can see here there's the set of images, and just choose merge options. It was shot on a tripod and I want it to align source images. I'm not going to mess with the ghosting options here. Reduce noise is fine. Remove chromatic aberrations. Everything should be fine with these basic settings right here. So I'll say align and merge. And it'll march through and grab these. So now you can see this is our merged set of photographs. And there are presets over here. And I really just want to know what kind of look I want. I don't want something ghastly like that. It may be pretty, but I'm looking for something that's more natural looking, because the idea is that we're going to produce reflections and in our software package that look like reality in this case. Maybe you do want to be artsy at some point. Detailed is a kind of a nice look, a little soft, a little more contrast here in this realistic or balanced preset. There's a realistics preset that's nice and sharp. I'm just going to go with balanced. If you want to take the time, you can come over here and adjust the parameters of your video, of your images if you want to, turn down the saturation and tune them. Create your own preset and then load your own preset later. But for our purposes, balanced looks pretty good to me, so I'm going to choose balanced. Now, I'm not going to do anything at this point. I'm just going to close the document and remember that balanced is what I want, and let that go away. And so now what I want to do is I need to set up a batch process to march through all of these images. I'm trying to save some time. So I'm going to hit batch bracketed photos. And that pops up this dialog here, which allows us to load more than one set at a time. I'll point myself to that same directory where those files were, hit select, that populates this little dialog right here. I know that I have 5 images at a time, like I said before, 2 above, 2 below, and then the base exposure in the middle, total of 5 images. My destination, this is where I want to output my photos once they've been processed. So I select my processed folder. And the key thing here, I like to keep a 16-bit TIFF just for my own kind of purposes. But the one that we're really interested in here is this 32-bit unprocessed merged file, a Radiance HDR file. So you want to make sure you check that box right there. And here's where we choose our preset. You can see all those presets that were listed in the previous interface that we saw, and I'm going to check balanced. Everything else is fine. I want to leave my images the same size, so I'm not going to crop anything. All the rest of this is all just fine, and then just say run, and it will start marching through those files there, and it will take us a little bit of time, but I'll come back and show you that after those files have been produced. Okay, we're back. Several minutes later, you can see here it's gone through and processed all of our files and placed them in that directory that I created. And here they are. And you can see it's named them based on a composite of the individual exposures that were used to produce the image. You can see here that the HDRs are kind of blown out looking. That's because they're 32-bit images. They're a wider gamut than the monitor itself here can display. And then our TIFF images, you can see it has the preset that we applied to it, and it's all within the color space of the monitor, so it looks reasonable to us on the monitor. But this is the one that we want right there, the HDRs for our image-based lighting. Now you can set this up to name these files for you in a particular way if you like. I find it just as easy to do it this way. I'm going to come through here and give these names that are meaningful to me. So I want to put them in an order. So I'm going to go 1 underscore, and this was my west shot. And this one is 2 underscore north. And this guy here was my 3rd shot east. And 4 underscore south. And this is 5, and we'll call it sky. And this one is going to be 6 underscore ground. All right, and I'm going to put all those inside of a folder I'll call HDR. All right. Okay, let's get started with PT GUI. Start a new project here. And what I want to do is import only the images that are tripod mounted, that are all from the same point of view. So that would be the first 5 images. This last image, this ground image, we actually moved the tripod so that we could capture the ground underneath. I don't want to bring that one in until later because I want to make sure that all of the basic images get stitched together properly first before I bring that bottom image in. So I'm going to select these 5 images and just drag them into PT GUI Pro. I happen to know that this is a fisheye lens, that it's 8 millimeters, and that the crop factor is 1. And so I will bring that in just like that. So that is our image, our set of 5 images. I'm going to go into advanced mode, and I want to go to my crop tab and just check that my crop is good. Looks like I can probably make that a little smaller. I don't need to capture quite so much something like that should be good. That looks good. That looks good. That looks good. And that looks good. All right. So now I'll go back to my Project Assistant tab, and I want to hit Align Images. It's going to march through all 5 of those images, stitch them together, and create this panorama that I have right here. All right, so you can see, obviously, the bottom, since we haven't brought in the ground, we have this nastiness along the bottom. You can see here the edges of the Nodal Ninja that are in the scene. And what I want to do is mask those portions of the base images out. So I'm going to leave my panorama view up, and I'm going to move over here to my masking tab. And I can move my mouse around and actually see the corresponding area that is underneath my mouse in the crop tab over here in my other view. If I click on the red button here, that's the actual mask tool. And let's pick one that's obvious to begin with. Notice right here that this is also simultaneously showing up in front of the auditorium there, or in front of the courtyard there. So I'm going to drag my mask over here and mask that out. Okay, this little portion here. Little button. Okay, and so that pretty much took care of that. And I'm not going to make you watch as I do all of these images, so I'll speed this up, and I'll be back in a second in real time. Okay, so now that we've masked that stuff out, let's take a look, get a preview, see what this looks like. Looks good there. Looks good there. This all looks good. Looks great. Look at that. Looks great. All the way around, nice and matched. And of course there is our hole where our tripod and the shadow was from when we shot it. So we want to be able to, we want to fix that. And the way to fix that is to come back to our project assistant here and pop up this ground image here. Let's drag that in. And what we've got to do is we've got to tell the software that that image should be treated differently than the rest. Image number 5 needs a viewpoint correction. It wasn't taken in the same location as the rest of these, so we need to prioritize these in terms of the stitching, and then this image gets a correction so that it lines up with the rest of these rather than the other way around. Alright, otherwise everything stays the same, so we'll say align images again. And we're going to have a little bit of blending that needs to be done again because of the problematic areas of that new image that we've introduced. So we'll come over here to the mask tab on it and look at number 5. Let's double check our crop area. Yeah, that's still good. So our mask on this image needs to be tweaked. So we'll do the exact same thing that we did with the other images that we brought in earlier. That should take care of that. Look how pretty that is. I'm going to come back over to my optimizer, run that one more time. And you can ignore this. This is not so good. The reason that it says this is not so good is because that viewpoint correction one at the bottom is really throws off the numbers. Okay, I think we're good. Let's take a look at our preview now. Everything still looks good. Ground still looks good. All this stuff is exactly as it was. Let's look at the bottom. Whoa, look at that. Not bad at all. Not bad at all. Little misalignment right there. Little misalignment right there. But other than that, this thing is perfect. Those two little areas, if somebody wanted to get really anal, they could get in there and get those fixed. You could do some control point editing, but for our purposes, which is essentially to generate lighting information and a little minor reflection off of some objects, this will be just fine as it is. One thing I could do is, if you look at this panorama, you'll see that whenever we create this image, the center point of it is straight ahead. If you wanted to reset the center of the the center of the panorama to, like, let's say the middle of the building or some other point, all you got to do is click this little plus set center point button and click where you want the center point, and it'll rotate everything around to that being the center point. I'll just do that now just for grins. Let's say I want this column to be the center point of our image. Actually, let me center it right there. Center it a little higher maybe. Something like that. That looks pretty good. Okay. I'm going to save this project and put it right there, and I'm just going to call it my HDRI courtyard. So the last thing that we need to do is export our images. That's going to happen under the Create Panorama tab. Click on Set Optimum Size. I like to create a QuickTime VR, and maybe make it a nice big guy. I'm going to make it a 4K monster. And I want to create, this is, so the HDR right here, the HDR 8 radiance file, that's the key file that we need right there for our image-based lighting. So make sure that that's selected. Here, the one that we're going to use for our QuickTime VR is a tone matte panorama. And then the HDR, we want an HDR panorama. You can output individual HDR layers. Let's say you wanted to make those adjustments to the control, the alignment points that I pointed out that were not quite lined up. You could output this as individual layers and open it in Photoshop and touch them up if you wanted to, but I'm happy with it just as it is. And then we say Create Panorama. Give it a second. And there we are. We have ourselves an HDR file. Nice and fat, 108 gigabytes. You can see it's nice wide gamut. And then here we have a QuickTime VR movie. This can only be opened in QuickTime 7 because QuickTime 10 or the latest version, this will not open QuickTime VR files. You'll want to open that up in QuickTime Player 7. And this guy's going to be pretty big, so it'll take it a second. Whoa, that's right. Let's put it this big. There we go. All right, and here's our beautiful QuickTime VR. No pinching at the poles. Only a minor misalignment down here at the bottom that we could deal with a little time if we wanted to. But this whole thing was a pretty quick process here. Okay, I think that should do it. Good luck. Have fun.